Let's go.
Raising the bar, cool, calm, but we strong, bringing justice to the wrong, but we'd rather get along cause we just people, dog. Protect them equal whether near they far. That's law, a little something I call raising the bar. Raising the bar. Raising the bar. Raising the bar.
Welcome back to another episode of Raising the Bar, the Dakota County Sheriff's Office podcast. Thank you all for joining us again. My name is Tim Hunt, and I am your host.
Lee Smith, co-host.
Yeah, you guys sound more excited.
I am excited. We're happy to be here. We're happy to be here. I'm impressed by the intro.
Yeah. I was thinking about rapping. Actually, funny about this intro. I actually have a version where I'm recorded rapping this. This is my brother, but
yeah,
I actually
You've got
recorded
one
myself.
where
I rap.
I think we should probably play it at some point.
Yeah. I just was like, man, if we do 100 of these things, then
Sooner or later,
I'm gonna have to listen to myself 100 times, like rapping it.
I don't see a problem with that.
I'm not a rapper.
But it's an Easter egg for somebody.
Yeah, maybe it's a celebration for
Yeah, I like it.
the
birthday
20th or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, so welcome back. Today we have a special guest, none other than our co-host, Lee Smith. He's an apprehension deputy here at the Sheriff's Office. Sort of new. I feel like we started pretty much at the same time.
Yeah, I think it was May when I started. Here.
Yeah.
So I think you were here a little bit before.
Yeah,
me, but
April.
yeah, it's weird. It's weird that the two new guys are the ones sitting here recording this, but here we are.
A wealth of experience. Something
like that.
Yeah. So how about we just kind of jump right into it. So obviously, people know you as to them, you're a voice of this podcast, but take us back to the beginning. Maybe how'd you get started in law enforcement? What pulled you into law enforcement, and ultimately what led you to the Sheriff's Office?
All right. It's most people say they had the calling and they had whatever to law enforcement. I started working. I was born and raised in South Dakota. Was looking for a job out of high school, and the prison was hiring in my area. I wasn't old enough to be a cop, but at the time I had never even thought about being a cop. So prison was hiring, and they paid more than anybody else. So there was absolutely zero real, law enforcement calling, I would say. I'd worked in loss prevention for a little bit with Kmart, which doesn't even exist anymore, so I guess we didn't do a very good job. But
Ran right out of business.
Yeah, whatever. But so I started working as a CO at the state prison in South Dakota, and I enjoyed it, but I disliked going to the same place every day.
Yeah.
It's a prison, it's a long-term facility, so it was the same people. And I enjoyed the law enforcing, the laws of the state, the rules of the prison, and kind of helping people in there. But at the same time, I wanted to expand my horizons. So when I turned 21, that was the magical age in South Dakota to be a cop. So I found it was a very small sheriff's office. Got hired there and went from there.
So you worked for the Sheriff's Office. So in Minnesota, there are some requirements to become a peace officer is what it's called in the state of Minnesota. So for you, is there any schooling? What were kind of the requirements for you to be able to work for the Sheriff's Office as a licensed officer, right?
Yeah. So the running joke in South Dakota is if you have a pulse and don't have a felony criminal history. But
shout out South Dakota.
Yeah, right. Hey, born and raised. In reality, South Dakota kind of runs it opposite of Minnesota here. So in Minnesota, for the people who don't know, or those of us that do, Minnesota has a skills portion of it. It's part of college, right? You go to a two-year school, you get your criminal justice associate's degree. Part of that schooling is a skills program, which is kind of it's a police academy. It's just broken out into more of a college atmosphere, from what I've been told. I've never attended. South Dakota is the opposite. So South Dakota has a single statewide police academy. So in South Dakota, you get hired. Your hiring agency sponsors you through the police academy. You go there. You stay there all week. I hesitate to say boot camp because it definitely doesn't have the same level of intensity that a boot camp does.
Focus time, or
Yeah, focus
something
time,
like that.
and I mean it was you're living in a dormitory. You've got a roommate.
Yeah.
You're up at 5 whatever for morning PT.
Sure.
We did white glove room inspection every day where you stand at attention outside your room. They come in, make sure your stuff's not messy. And then day of class up till 5, 6 o'clock. Sometimes we'd have some night PT stuff. But then at that point, we were allowed to leave campus, right? We could go off campus, do whatever. Curfew was, I don't even remember, 9 or 10 p.m.
Yep.
And that was, at the time I took it, it was I think 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're at the sheriff's office. What type of stuff did you do at the sheriff's office? How long were you there?
So I was with them for it was right around 2 years.
Yeah.
Super small office. We had 3 deputies and the sheriff. Pretty similar in square footage to Dakota County. A little different.
Interesting, right?
Little different in population. I think there were about 6,000 people in the entire county. It's actually the county where my family started. My grandpa farmed the county, so a lot of the names were familiar-ish and things like that. But did all of the same stuff we do here. Just a lot of it was very different in the fact that it was a small county. Yeah. So, for example, we didn't have a jail facility. We contracted with a neighboring county. It was, I want to say 30, 40 miles away. So when we would have court, we had a courthouse. When court was in session and we had an in custody person coming to court, we would that morning drive over to the jail, pick them up, bring them over to court, present them to the court, and then once they were done with court, bring them back.
Interesting.
But other than that, take calls for service as they come in, some proactive patrol stuff. We also had the Lower Brule Indian Reservation, which was within our county, so that kind of added another layer to it as well.
So how did you kind of interact with reservation? Because we have reservations here, and I know they have like their conservation officers. So how was that relationship?
So our relationship was great with the tribal law enforcement. South Dakota is a little different in that state law enforcement has no jurisdiction over Native American people on tribal land. We wouldn't patrol tribal land. They have their own police departments, and they would kind of handle all that business there. Where it got interesting was if it was a non-tribal member that committed a crime even though it was on tribal land, it would then fall on the sheriff's office to do the prosecution, the arrest, etc. So basically, if take an assault, if you had 2 tribal members, that was a tribal police problem. If you had 2 non-tribal members, that was a county sheriff problem. And if you had a tribal member and a non-tribal member, a lot of times that would fall back to the federal government, the FBI, whatever.
Interesting.
But we were not allowed, without permission, to, like, if we had a car chase, when they got to the reservation line, unless we had prior permission specifically for that chase to continue to chase them, we couldn't chase them past the reservation line.
Sounds like a good plan to do
that. It did happen occasionally.
Okay, so but now you somehow made your way to Minnesota. I know you worked for a police department or couple. Tell me about that. Yeah,
so I was working for Lyman County, wanted to kind of expand my horizons. Very small town we lived in, young kid, whatever. I had gone to the academy with a friend who had was working for Sturgis Police Department out western side of South Dakota. Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, probably have heard of that.
You ride motorcycles?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, do you?
I do.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he had kind of said that they were hiring. I went in, I applied for it, ended up getting hired, and so I went out to the Sturgis Police Department and was out there up until the time we moved here to Minnesota.
Yeah, interesting. So what made you come back to the sheriff's office? Right, you started at this small, sheriff's office. Then you have, I feel like the majority of your career at police departments.
Yeah, so I spent, without doing math, 7-8 years, I think, at Sturgis. Super fortunate. I've been super fortunate throughout my entire career. I've been given a lot of opportunities that I think a lot of people just haven't had. Sure. So, and that's more right place, right time than anything else. But so while I was at Sturgis, we have the motorcycle rally, biggest rally in the world, I think, still at this point. We'd go from town of 7,000-8,000 people to over 1 million for about 10 days. During that rally, a number of years, I was very fortunate in the fact that I got to attach to investigations and work some plainclothes gang intelligence stuff and whatnot, working alongside HSI and the United States Marshals and ATF and stuff.
HSI is
Homeland Security
Homeland
investigations.
Security. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. They've been in the news a little bit lately as we go. But so got to do that. I was talking about motorcycles while I was there. I was a police motorcycle instructor for the Black Hills. I was one of the only ones out there at the time. But yeah, ended up moving out here, and again, came out and worked for a police department here for quite a while as well.
Well, I want to go back to you were a police motorcycle trainer.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was a blast.
Yeah.
I love motorcycles, Harleys specifically. And we rode electric glides and road kings. But yeah, it makes you a very good rider in a very short period of time. I'm sure you can look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it, but most of what it is, it's not like high-speed motorcycle race stuff.
Yeah.
It's mostly slow-speed motorcycle control.
Yeah.
So you learn how to ride a 700-800 pound motorcycle at slow speeds, very tight turns. You'll see the cone patterns and stuff on YouTube. But yeah, you drop them a lot learning how to do it. But I came out of that with so many hours of riding, and then there were a couple of years that I also did not do the undercover stuff, and I did the motor patrol for the rally as well. So also being Sturgis, again, talking about opportunities and just the ability to do things, the motorcycle piece was a very big PR piece out there. Most places, when they get police motorcycles, if they go through Harley Davidson, they go through the corporate portal, they order their motorcycles, etc. Ours were given to us by Harley. I think they wanted the police to be riding Harleys at the Harley rally. With the understanding that there were 2 bikes that came every year. We had a fleet of 4 is what we kept. And then when we got to 6, the 2 oldest, we would then auction off for a cause, right? We paid for all the outfitting and all of that. But with that being said, that I got to interface directly with Harley Davidson, right? It was just a different experience. I've sat down with Willie Davidson, the guy who designs a lot of stuff. He gave me some swag and whatnot. Just got to meet a lot of people that normally you wouldn't. And then along with that, when I did the motorcycle patrol stuff, there were a lot of motorcycle rides and kind of PR stuff that we would lead the rides and do things like that. So, Five Finger Death Punch, Corey Hart, a lot of celebrity people that otherwise you never would have got to interface with.
See, I feel like you're sharing so many cool stories, just like blurring by them. And I know people who are listening and watching are like, wait, what?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. This might be a multi-episode thing.
Give me one of the things that maybe like stuck out, like one of the stories maybe during your time that you're like, man, like I know you say right place, right time, but like, man, I'm lucky to be doing this.
I don't. There's so many of them. What's safe? It's the motorcycle rally, so not everything's probably safe to tell the story for on the podcast either. It's a great question, though.
We'll come back. We'll put a pin in it.
We'll come back.
Okay. Okay. So let's move to present day, right? Now you're at the sheriff's office. Now you're an apprehension and warrant deputy.
Yep.
What attracted you about this job, and what is it? What is your role? What do you do?
So my role here, statutorily, the sheriff's office is responsible for enforcing the arrest warrants from the court. Now, all cops arrest people on warrants. We're the only ones that are statutorily listed as we are supposed to be doing this. So that is my job day in and day out. Is I go to our list of active warrants, and as warrants come out, I try and there's way too many for just a couple of us to handle. So we just kind of try and triage the list to the highest the ones that probably pose the highest danger to the continued safety of the public or maybe certain individuals, and we go find them and arrest them.
And there's a lot that goes into that. You know, like you're in the office. Like sometimes I know you're all out and about, but the investigative work that you do is quite impressive. I mean, you know, without going into too many details about the ways you locate these people, but I mean, you're an apprehension deputy, but I mean, you're also a detective. I feel like a lot of the times figuring out, putting the pieces together where these people can be. So maybe just talk to you a little bit about how much of your time and your energy is spent actually locating them and the detail that you go into actually locating these people.
No, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I spend 50-60% of my time as more of an analyst than a police officer. And shout out to our analysts because they do it all the time and they're much better at it than I am. And they are one of the main reasons I'm able to locate as many people as I do. But yeah, it's the job has changed a lot in the 18 years I've done it. It's very much a electronic-based job now, whether that be our general duty detectives investigating a crime, whether that be our drug task force investigating a crime, whether that be me trying to find a fugitive. So much of it is database resources and other ways that we have to, write search warrants, get information, and then locate people. Now there is still some of the good old. I'm going to go sit outside this house for the next day and just see who comes and who goes and try and locate my person. But in a metro area of 4.5 million people or whatever we have, that can sometimes be not a waste of time, but not a very efficient use of time. Yeah. So yeah, I spend a lot of my time trying to narrow things down as best I can to make that efficient use of time to find them.
Yeah. I mean, to your point about, technology, like bringing us closer and being able to find and locate people, it's just become such a part of, I feel like, the way we do things at the office, just in general, how we use technology. Obviously, we have this podcast, but our electronic crimes task force, our drug task force, all these people, all these task force, they use technology to support their job, and obviously that's a really large part of how you are able to do your job in such an efficient and effective way.
Oh, huge, yeah. I mean, and we're invaded by technology. We've got laptops in front of us. We've got a computer that rides around in our pocket. I mean, here we are, right? Like,
can't escape it.
Yeah, it's just so. Regardless of the crime, yes, evidence has just transferred so much from. It was all physical evidence and DNA, and all that stuff is still important, but there's so much digital evidence now that we're very lucky in Dakota County, both our county and the other agencies in this county and in the metro in general. We've got a lot of people who are very smart with that stuff, because there's a lot of that stuff that if I didn't have somebody to explain it to me, it's like a foreign language. But yeah, it's so much of it is that, and Minnesota's been very controlled with, for lack of a better term, our access to it. Pretty much everything requires search warrants and judges signing off on, and it's not us as Big Brother just monitoring things, right? There's a lot of checks and balances that go into accessing the data, and honestly, that's where a lot of the time is spent, is writing search warrants and conferring with the county attorney's office and everybody else to make sure that while we are accessing this data to locate these people who are alleged, sometimes they're complaint warrants where they aren't convicted yet, right? Or they've been convicted and they violated probation, whatever. But we still want to make sure that constitutional rights are recognized and respected. So it's all done on the up and up. It's all done through the courts. I mean, it's very, very checks and balances on that level. But yeah, there's so much digital evidence now.
Yeah. So speaking of, sort of evidence and technology, and we kind of briefly mentioned the drug task force. So For our listeners, the sheriff's office is a part of a number of different task force, and a lot of these tasks, or all these task force, are still in existence today.
Yep.
And Lee was sort of part of that. There's obviously certain pieces of that time you can't obviously say out loud for out of respect for the case and stuff.
Yeah, some things we can't talk about.
But yeah, so tell me about your time. I will show you guys if you're watching on the video. He gave me this.
I did. Yep. That's Gunner. So
Yeah.
I spent 5-6 years up at the Drug Task Force here in Dakota County. Jumping back just a little bit, when I moved here to Minnesota, I started working for Savage Police Department. They at the time were a member or a partner with the task force, so I became an investigator over there. And at a certain point in time, I got assigned to the task force. And then like I said, I spent the last 5-6 years over there. Part of that time there with Gunner, I ran a canine for most of my time up there. Canine Gunner. He's now retired. He is probably asleep on my couch as we speak. He lives at home with me. He did the entire time. Chocolate lab, narcotics only. He was not an apprehension dog. I think he would have probably watched me get assaulted and then went home with whoever assaulted me. He's very, very friendly.
Yeah.
So
And then just smiled at you the whole time.
100%.
Being like, did I do a good job?
yeah, you bring him a treat and he'll let anything happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a fantastic experience up there. And again, just a lot of right place, right time moments, but some incredible experience gained up there as well.
Yeah. What do you feel like is one of the big things that you learned from there? Maybe it's a case you worked or something. What do you feel like? How has that shaped really the way you are working now as an apprehension deputy?
So as much as it's not a super exciting thing or like even really law enforcement based, it's collaboration and networking. Yeah. I think as a cop, I've talked about this with a number of the guys up there, and I think everybody agrees that you go from being a patrol cop to maybe an investigator, doing the general investigations of whatever you deal with, and all of a sudden you jump into this task force role. And at the time when I went up there, there were multiple high-level narcotics cases that had been going on for years. Standing on the shoulders of giants had nothing to do with the initial creation of the case, but you start dealing with cartels across the border and transnational drug organizations and things like that, and you start to get kind of a big head and think that you're doing really cool work, which you are, but other people are doing cool work too, right? Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things I took away from up there, because as I spent more time up there, you shift from realizing that you're not the coolest thing in the world anymore to there are a lot of really good people doing really good work, not only throughout the metro, throughout the state, throughout the country. So many of the cases that I worked up there, worked with, to translate to the same thing I do here now, so much of what gets accomplished up there is because of cooperation. It's because of cooperation between local agencies, local and federal agencies, local and state agencies. In law enforcement, there's not a great way to consolidate data. There are tools, and people keep trying, but different departments have different tools, right? And a lot of times you would talk to somebody about a case, and I have a certain amount of information, and you have completely different but very relevant information. And without all of that collaboration, things wouldn't happen. And it's the same thing with what I do now. I get so much information on these people. It may be a second-degree assault warrant that's based out of wherever, making it up, but Egan, right? Egan police officers and Egan investigators, they know Egan. I know Egan, but I don't know Egan. Right. So if I wouldn't talk to them, I could go up there and kind of blindly stumble around, but I'm going to get so much more relevant information by having those relationships and maintaining those to do that. And it was really the task force that taught me that for lack of a better term, like the world is bigger than my own circle. Right. And there's a lot of really relevant information outside of my circle that I need to lean on.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it in a previous episode, specifically the one with the sheriff, about how important collaboration is, right? That, the sheriff's office, we sort of, we don't patrol the entire county, but we would do business in the entire county, and in collaboration, is such an important and critical part. It's like, yeah, I mean, sure, we could go to another city and work and eventually figure it out, but like, wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be more effective and efficient to lean on your partners who know their communities like the back of their hand, right? Because they're in these communities every single day. And so
Absolutely.
It's a common theme that keeps coming up about the need to collaborate and how important that is.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it requires slowing down a little bit too to do that collaboration. I'll give a brief story. I was passed along information. We had one of our deputies had ran a license plate in the county, came back with a fully extraditable warrant out of New York City. So anything for the listeners, if you don't know, if it's from New York, but they are willing to come here and get them, it's usually it's a pretty serious offense, right? They don't do that for low-level stuff. So I started looking at it, name matched, date of birth matched, height, weight, demographics, they all matched as well. Like it looks like the same person, right? From a paperwork standpoint. I went in and I looked at some prior police reports with the guy who lives here, mentions having family on the East Coast, right? So like all these pieces are falling into place. Now, I think anybody that had that information and went and arrested that guy, I think they've done their due diligence and they've, whatever. With the networking and with the collaboration and having learned what I've learned, slowed it down a little bit. I was able to I knew someone who knew someone that was in New York and was able to actually get me a photograph of the guy from New York. Well, it wasn't the same guy.
Wow.
Right? And again, from a lower level, all the information that came back on the computer that was provided to your normal police officer or deputy, it was the same guy, right, for all intents and purposes. And it wasn't until the photo, but if I wouldn't have kept those networks and had that collaboration and been able to find that, somebody would have gotten arrested that until got fingerprinted, you never would have
figured it out.
Yeah, you never would have known. And it's just, there's so many instances of that over the course of my career that I've run into where you've just got to talk to people outside of your normal circle.
Wow, that's a fascinating story. I mean, collaboration is, we're redundant now, but it's so important. That's such a great story. Thanks for sharing that. So another question I guess I have for you, and you kind of already said this, but, working in different agencies, you have different perspectives from, working in South Dakota to working, in the metro area for a police department and now working at the sheriff's office. Kind of how has your, I guess, perspective changed or grown in the profession? Because I imagine it's evolved in different ways, and now you've always been behind the screen, behind the scenes doing stuff, and now, I mean, you're the co-host on a podcast, so that
we hope people are listening to.
Oh, they'll definitely listen to it. But how has your perspective grown and changed and evolved to, I don't know, where you are right now?
Oh, absolutely. I think I've had a huge change in perspective, and I think most cops do throughout their career. I'm going on, I think it's year 18 now. And perspective, both from coming from one of the smallest departments I think you could probably come from, with 3 deputies and a sheriff, to a small city department in Sturgis that for 2 weeks out of the year turned into a very large department, to I would say even smaller suburban department here in Minnesota. I think 40, 50 some sworn, up to the sheriff's office. I don't know. Do you want my professional changes or kind of the internal?
I mean, whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah,
I mean, because they kind of bleed in together.
Oh, absolutely,
right? I mean, even like random, but like you're really like into photography, and now that's honestly kind of blended into you being a part of this. So I guess you've evolved as a person totally, but whatever you're
100%.
sharing.
Yeah, you've probably heard this, but I like to talk. That will be, you talk to all my bosses all the way back through that last 18 years, and they'll probably all say the same thing. But you start out as a cop and you're going to save the world, and everything's super exciting, and car chases and, bad guys and whatever. Not that those things aren't still enjoyable, but I think as you get older in that aspect, and as you spend more time in the career, and as society has changed, right? It's a very different. The acceptance of what law enforcement is involved in is very different now than it was 18 years ago. So it's not that I don't enjoy doing those things, but as I've matured and grown in my career, younger me would probably hate me right now, but you start to think about liability and is the juice worth the squeeze when, okay, you're going to chase somebody, right? You're going to do whatever, and is it worth that? Is the offense worth what's going to happen? And sometimes the answer is yes. I think, and I've been very happy. The sheriff's office here is if it's worth it, we do chase people, right? We do. We make sure that they're going to have to stand in front of the judge and answer for what they're alleged to have done. I think no pursuit policies cause problems because then everybody runs for everything, and that's just my personal opinion. But with that being said, it's also, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I'd chase them till the wheels fall off, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I'm not going to answer the same way now. And it's the same thing, even when I started, with SWAT and task force stuff and whatever years and years ago. Yep, let's kick the door in, let's execute that search warrant, let's go clear that house. Where again, now it's okay. That's what we're going to do, and that's what needs to be done for the furtherance of the investigation or the apprehension of somebody, but what's the safest way we can do this? Yeah. And a lot of times the safest way isn't the most fun or the quickest or but as I've gone through the career on that end of it, it's just it's the right way to do things, as much as it's not sometimes the most exciting way to do things.
And I haven't shared this yet, but I was a police officer nowhere near as long as you, but I think that's such a great point of, the profession is always progressing. It's always evolving. And, the mission statement here, we talk about, the 3 Ps, being professional, progressive, and proactive. And I feel like you're, the consummate example of that is saying, hey, we thought of it this way, and maybe it did work. Maybe that was fine, 20 years ago, but what we always want to be doing is evolving, our person and our profession to meet the needs of our residents. And so being progressive in the way you do your tactics, the way you interact with residents, the way you do your job, right? 20 years ago, technology was drastically different than it is today. And so being able to not, be a grouch and say, oh, I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to lean into this newness of what the profession is becoming. I feel like you've done a great job at leaning into that and, being really self-reflective on, what's best for you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's everything changes, right? There's nothing I hate more in this profession than hearing somebody ask a question of, hey, why do we do that? And the response is, well, that's the way we've always done it.
Always done it that way.
I hate it. But everything changes, right? Yeah. If I look back at when I started this job and I look back at anything, if I look back at how we drove cars, the cars we used, the technology we had, the less lethal stuff, right? Yeah. Tasers weren't a thing really when I started. They were just kind of coming on scene. When I started, I had one camera in my car, and it was a Sony Handycam that was attached to the
mounted.
Yeah, it was attached to the dash. That was a dash cam, right?
Wow.
I remember when body cameras came out. We had them in Sturgis much earlier than most people, because for those of us who are old enough to remember this, Axon at the time, I think it was still called Taser, they did like a reality show where it was when the camera was still mounted on the glasses and whatever, but they did a reality show which was all Taser footage, right? Who knew they were going to turn into the absolute giant conglomerate that they are now? I feel like everything I touch in law enforcement has an Axon label on it. But
our cameras are
yeah, right. That's recorded on the Axon Body Cam 4. No, but they brought those out. They wanted to film shows at the rally. And as a police department's a not-for-profit agency, right, they couldn't pay us to do the filming. So what they did instead was they provided a lot of Axon material. Great marketing scheme, right? But so I had a body camera long before it was a normal thing. But I remember being incredibly service resistant when it came to getting a body camera, and everybody was, right? Because why do I need this camera? I've never had one before.
Yeah.
This is just, it's going to be whatever. You know, and then I remember relatively early on, there were a couple of different, somebody attempted to make a complaint for something that they alleged that I did, and the chief at the time, his response was, well, yeah, come into my office, we'll sit down and we'll watch the body cam footage. And you watch the body cam footage, and the complaint or the lawsuit disappeared immediately. And I went, oh, that's, well, yeah, because I'm not doing anything wrong when I'm working. I'm professional, I'm whatever. So yeah, why would I be upset that there's another camera recording the interaction, right? Yeah. And I mean, I think we're so far past that in law enforcement at this point. Everything we do is recorded, right? I've got there are 2 or 3 cameras in my car. There's one on my chest. Like there's, you know, there's plus, depending on what I'm doing, other people make sure and record us as well. Right. And that's just kind of that shift. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there's so many of those things, tactics, all of that. The way we cleared rooms 15 years ago was scary compared to the way we do it now. And I look back, and it was the best we knew at the time. Right. But good Lord.
But with new information, you have new tactics.
Correct. Right? And like you said, trying to progress forward. Right. Yeah. Always trying to make sure that we are keeping our people as safe as we can, providing the best service that we can, the professionalism, all of that. But part of that, I truly do believe, is making sure that we are also personally and professionally moving forward with those skills.
Yeah. You know what I was hearing? I heard a lot of stuff, a lot of great stuff in that. The one big thing I heard is that you're made for the camera.
I guess they've been good. So I was lucky to completely avoid being on camera because almost every year somebody was filming something at the rally. There's a friend of mine who actually is relatively high up in the DNR here in Minnesota that we called Hollywood for a number of years because he was the face of the Sturgis rally.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Funny. DNR is Department of Natural Resources.
Correct. Yeah.
Another thing in law enforcement we do a lot of times.
Acronyms.
We love acronyms. I mean, there's an acronym for everything. But Department of Natural Resources.
The government loves acronyms. We really do. And if you talk to somebody in a different government department, they have their own set of acronyms that even we don't understand.
Well, you know, you're exactly right. I was going to say, you know, I worked in corporate America for a little bit, and they have their own, shorthand, and you're like, what? What is this?
Yeah, you have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, you're like, just nod and
smile, pretend, right? Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, Google afterwards, ChatGPT afterwards, and figure it out. All right. Well, one more question, a couple more questions for you. I guess when you think about, you know, where you are in your career, specifically for the sheriff's office, what excites you about the future, working with this office, different things you have to do? Obviously, the podcast is something new, a wrinkle that you probably didn't imagine you'd be doing. Here, what really excites you about your role here and what you're looking forward to in the future?
Well, I think I'm very blessed here in the fact that they kind of gave me a blank canvas to play with, right? It's kind of it's a new thing for the sheriff's office, and we're still kind of figuring out how we go. But they've given me the ability, and they've given me the trust to kind of make it what I want it to be. They allow me to, for the most part, select the cases I work, the warrants I work, how I work them, who I collaborate with, and it's very exciting to me to see that this is still very much in its infancy, right? It's a new thing. We're continuing to try and build it. And budget constraints and everything aside, I would love to see this in the next 5+ years that we're able to add some people and we're able to do things like that. I mean, there's more than enough work out there. To give you an idea, Dakota County, on average, we've got about, I'll say, between usually 1,400 and 1,500 active felony warrants. At any point in time. Now, that runs all the way back to, I don't know where our records end. I think I've seen some back in the early to mid-'90s. And a lot of those are either completely gone, deceased, whatever the case may be, that they're not really a valid warrant yet. It's just nobody has connected the dots. Again, information sharing, right? nobody's connected the dots to have the court close those warrants out. But, with just a couple of us, there's a lot of work out there. And that's really what I'm excited about, is to just see where we're able to drive this and what we're able to come up with over the next few years.
Wow. Well, the last question is the big so what? So if nobody, if someone listened to this and, they were kind of, on their phone or whatever typing, what's the big takeaway, I guess, you'd like for people to leave you with? Maybe it could be about your personal, or not your personal, your experience, or maybe your philosophy on policing. What's kind of the big takeaway or message you think is important for residents to hear?
I just think the big takeaway is there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people are doing behind the scenes that I don't think most people know about. And I it's part of the reason why I wanted to be involved in this in the first place, is I think this is a great platform to get some of those stories and those people out there that you don't really think about. You don't think about, be it task force, be it warrants, be it whatever, but the amount of work that our drug task force has done over the years, not tooting my own horn, it was mostly everybody else that I worked with that really made those cases, that did make those cases. The amount of narcotics that they take off the street, right? I mean, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of pounds over the years I was there. But that stuff's not advertised, right? And it can't be due to cases. The warrant stuff, the amount of high level assault warrants, sexual assaults, things like that we have been able to put into custody after them avoiding custody for months and months and months while they are still out victimizing people and doing other things like that. So it's just, I think the moment is just, it's a lot, there's a lot more going on than I think what most people think about. And it's good to get that message out there and kind of get people thinking about that other stuff too. No different than we're going to have one of the jail staff commanders on later. I think everybody thinks that people go to jail. Nobody thinks about what goes into behind the scenes, right? And I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to push that out there.
Right. Awesome. Well, Lee Smith, thank you for joining. We'll give you some claps.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I bet you. That was a lot of claps. I bet you had no idea that I was going to talk this much.
No, dude, no. I didn't know you. Yeah. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Raising the Bar, the podcast. You can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts or your video podcasts. Thanks again, and we'll see you out there.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Raising the bar, cool, calm, but we strong, bringing justice to the wrong, but we rather get along, cause we just people, dog. Protect them equal, whether near they far. That's law, a little something I call raising the bar. 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 Raising the bar.